All right. A very good morning, good evening to everyone who is joining us today. Thank you so much for joining this session. I'm very excited to have a fantastic, highly experienced panel with us to share about where Indian students or broadly South Asian students are applying to college this year. Joining me today is Amardeep Bhatia, who is a leading independent counselor based out of Bangalore and the founder of College Guru. Anjali Raghbir is the founder of Writers Key, a boutique IEC practice in New Delhi. Neha Arora is the counselor at Kodaikanal International School, and which is a long established IB school in South India, and Poonam Prakash ma'am, who is the head of counseling at the Sri Ram School, Malsari, which is one of the most respected private schools. So in this session, I'll sort of go ahead and ask you questions and invite you to share your insights and thoughts about what's happening, what are the students thinking about. So let's start with Neha. Neha, first question to you is, what shifts are you observing in the destination preferences of Indian students this year? Are the traditional markets like the US and UK still dominating, or are you seeing serious interest in newer regions like Europe or the UAE or Asia? And before you start, please feel free to sort of talk a little bit about yourself, about your school. I think that will give a little context to the audience. Yes.
Okay, so I'm Neha Arora and I work at Kodaikanal International School. Like you mentioned, Devesh, certainly it's a long established school in Tamil Nadu. It has like 125-year-old institution. In fact, this is a 125th year that we are celebrating. Um, Given that we have a lot of international community of students that come to our school. So we have students coming from Southeast Asia, we have students joining from Britain, US, and other regions as well. So coming to your question that do I see shift in students' study destinations? Yes, of course. And there are certain reasons which I mean, it's quite evident that there are visa restrictions on certain countries we cater to, like Myanmar and all. So definitely students are not looking at the US. In fact, we had huge challenges last year where students got admissions in US universities and later they had to shift their study destinations. And we are still struggling with that. Besides that, there are many reasons that why the shift is happening. The dollar rates are going up, the university fees is going up, and of course, the affordability becomes a huge concern for parents to send to these big four countries. Besides that, I think that virtual and digital media has given a lot of exposure to education systems in various other countries. Then third reason that I see, there's a lot of hearsay, specifically in the region I'm working in right now. So there are students who went to a variety of schools across the world and globe. And therefore, when they connect with the alumni, they get little satisfied and um, they feel secure to explore those study destinations. And that is why we are seeing the shift. In terms of countries, I mean, amazingly, this year we had a lot of students applying to Malaysia as well. So, and Thailand has also come into exploration pathways for study destinations. So, these are new shifts. And otherwise, Europe, yes, of course, and it has always been one of the study destinations countries such as Poland, Finland. I mean, besides Germany and Netherlands, also we have these countries where students are applying to. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, some of these are really, definitely not like the traditional destinations,
Yeah.
Malaysia, Thailand, Poland, absolutely. Uh,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Neha.
Oh, I just wanted to add, even students are looking at Japan for certain programs, so courses which are offered in English and like Japanese studies and all. So we had interest in linguistics and all as well. So students are applying depending upon the program that they are interested in.
Wow, fantastic. Amardeep, what's your take on this one?
So, hello everybody. Great to be here with such a fantastic panel. My practice is a boutique, smaller practice, and we cater mostly to students from tier 2, 3, and 4 cities. So, my perspective comes from there. And also, in the past 6 months or so, I've been doing some extensive research on where the shift is happening, and I've been looking at some numbers. So, I'll share that data with you. Maybe that gives us a more analytical perspective on this whole idea. I completely agree with Neha. I think we are seeing, I think it's not about where they are going to choose the, where Indian students are choosing to go these days. It's not a simple story of numbers going up and down. What we are actually seeing is a huge strategic realignment. And that I think, is because of a mix of changing global politics, economic realities. And interestingly enough, now I see students and families really focusing on what they're going to get out of their education in the long run. So having said that, like Neha mentioned, the big four English speaking countries, UK, US, Canada, and Australia, they're still on the radar. I keep hearing polarized discussions about how it's completely gone, like Canada's completely wiped off of the face of the earth. I don't see that in terms of research, I think, but their paths are definitely splitting. If you take the United States, for example, you might have heard about a dip, but the latest government data from 2025 shows a strong comeback. Okay, so we are looking at, say, a 23% increase year on year since 23-24. And I don't know if you guys read this, but recently I was reading somewhere that now India is the single largest source of international students in the US for the first time ever. I think we've crossed 330,000 students. And why is this? Because of obviously the world-class universities, the STEM programs, etc. On the flip side, we see that Canada has had a dramatic drop. There's been a 41% drop since from 23 to 24. And interestingly enough, now we're hearing some humming conversations about Canada making it back on the list. So it'd be interesting to see what that number looks like in a year from now. UK has also seen about a 28% decrease because of the new rules. Australia, obviously, because of the caps on the study permits that they've done, they've also seen a 12% drop. So this whole situation has really, in my opinion, opened the door to what I call the new frontier destinations. Yeah, ma'am is absolutely right. Germany is obviously taking the charge, 49% increase in 2024. Ireland, Poland, UAE, Dubai. Who would have thought Dubai was going to be a major educational hub? That's come up. I think I was looking at the numbers. 43% of Dubai's foreign student intake for 2024-25 was Indian students, right? So that to me is like, and I was wondering how that is. And when I read up upon it, it looks like, of course, it's close to home, it has English programs, it's a safe country, it's a strong job market, there's attractive long-term residency options like the 10-year golden visa. So what I'm looking at right now is, what it's telling us is people are adopting a much more value for money and outcome driven approach rather than just looking closely at one destination. And I think it's a very smart, practical shift because I think students are looking at this as getting focused on a good return on their overall investment. And I'm very glad to see that they are not only just looking at tuitions, but they're looking at cost of living, opportunities afterwards, etc. So it's not about following the crowd anymore. I think it's about making smart, informed choices. And it's excellent to see that families have started looking in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think apart from the the new destinations coming up, and thanks for sharing all those very interesting numbers. We are talking about the cost, so that's my next question now about the cost and affordability factors. Uh, this is for Anjali. Anjali, how are your students and families approaching affordability and scholarships in their college decision process this year? Are you seeing more openness to maybe lesser known institutions which are more generous with scholarships and financial aid?
So I'm Anjali Raghbir. I run a boutique independent counseling company in Delhi. And, I get a lot of people here which talk about return on investment, which Amardeep also mentioned. And I think it's interesting to see that that conversation has changed so quickly from, earlier I would just do a presentation of costs in the US and UK, nobody would bat an eyelid. But now it's all about return on investment. What are we really going to get? How are we going to repay our loans? How are we going to, if there are scholarships available, where are they available? People are open to state schools as well, which are a much lower tuition than private schools. For example, if NYU is something like $80,000-$90,000, the UCs would be somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000. So there's a huge, gap, and parents are becoming more and more savvy about it. Today, a good US education can cost you anything from 2.5 to 4 crores. And a UK education could be anything between 1 to 2 crores. And I'm not even talking about, the thing about visiting, etc. To your question, Devesh, about how are, students really feeling about scholarships, how are they really addressing it? I think there is still a mindset, at least I feel in Delhi, and that might be very geographically pertinent, and Poonam ma'am would kind of weigh in on this. But I do feel that there is still a hang up for going to the top premium institutions. And unfortunately, they are very picky. And how much can they sort of support the education dreams of so many people? I have had success in the past with smaller schools, I would say, the Haverfords, the Middleburys, the absolutely premium best institutions in the US, which are small liberal arts schools. But I feel the Ivies are still very, very discerning. And unfortunately, it's a real gap between trying to make the parents understand about this. You really have to nurture them into sort of letting go of that dream, and point them towards a direction where an equally stellar education could be available, more scholarships could be available in schools such as Drexel or Case Western University offers about $15,000 to $20,000 off, every year if you're a deserving engineering student. So there are many schools that are an option, but I think it requires a lot of still sort of hand holding and pointing towards that direction, as opposed to coming in and saying, okay, fine, I'm okay with this. It'll still start with the Ivy bargaining chip, and then you sort of, move downwards. At least that's been my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Anjali. I think absolutely there is a lot of that's where all the counselors come in, where you sort of bring the parents' attention or students' attention to those hidden gems, is what we usually call them. I can see two hidden gems on my screen, by the way, Syracuse and Lynn. So Poonam ma'am, over to you.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you, Devesh, for giving me the opportunity to be on this wonderful panel with very esteemed panelists. A little about my background. So, I've been working with the Sri Ram School since the year 2000, moved into the career counseling department 5-6 years ago. And to give context to my conversation, now I head the two campuses of the Sri Ram School, which is the Aravali campus and the Malsri campus. Now, to answer the question, I'm going to kind of put my students into two buckets. So, on one campus, we have the completely Indian curriculum. So, how they view scholarships, aid, admissions is slightly different from the other campus, especially in the other campus when I talk about the international students, where we offer the Cambridge and the IBDP program. So if I look at the students pursuing the national curriculum, I definitely see a huge shift in data. When I look at data, I definitely see a huge shift in numbers. And really warms my heart to see that the interest in India is really revived. So we have a graduating cohort of 150 students in each campus. And we did a session on CUET for grades 11 and 12 combined. I must have had about 100 students in that room. They were listening to alumni who were talking about the CUET exam and the Delhi University. So definitely, like most of the panelists have spoken about return on investment. I also want to add the geopolitical situation, the rising demographic dividend of India. So India is definitely an upcoming destination for students pursuing the national curriculum, at least I'm right now talking about just the purview as a counselor of the Sri Ram schools, right? And within India also, like Devesh rightly mentioned, he used the word hidden gems. I love that word. So in fact, next week, we have called only the hidden gems from India to do sessions with our graduating batch. So the engineering students are going to listen to the universities like Mahindra, BM Munjal, RV College in Bombay, in Bangalore. So children are expressing an interest, but it's also very important for us as counselors to encourage that interest. right? Like I tell the admissions AOs that if you have one convert, we had one convert to Shulini in the batch of 2020. Now we have students who are applying and looking at it. So children who are looking at India, also there is a shift from the big names, from the Ashokas, Kriyas, Plakshas, to the hidden gems, like I like to call them. Further, the universities that are opening up their campuses in India. It was very interesting. I was on a call just half an hour before this, and I had a student talking to me about, and I think this news has just come out about the universities from Australia which are opening up campus in India. So minds of the children are opening. And if I look at children who are pursuing the international curriculum, yes, there is still a lot of attention to US, UK, especially US and UK in my school. But to give you an example, last year we had a student with a very holistic personality, dreamt of going through a college in the US, got into an Ivy League. Her brother's already there in UC Berkeley, but looking sheerly for the ROI and the global slowdown, the child finally took her admission in a leading college in the UK. Although if you asked me as a counselor, she was a very all-rounded student and she would have really thrived in US. So minds are definitely opening up to both destinations. I'm not talking of destinations, it's already been covered, but also to the smaller colleges within those destinations in any of the country, whether it's looking at the Dublin City University or you are looking at the smaller colleges in Europe. Children are, we had a student last time who went to the Stockholm School of Economics. It was the first in our school, and that application has encouraged so much more. I think as counselors, we should also make it a point to call back our alum to talk to our students, and then their minds open up when they hear about it from their alum. So a lot of change definitely is there, which kind of warms my heart because I feel they're moving away from the big four destinations. I
Wow,
hope that answered the question, Devesh.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. This is something we also see in Next Genius, where, let's say, when we have one Next Genius scholar from a school,
Yeah,
the next
true.
year we see many more applications coming in from that school. So, shifting gears now, we're talking a little bit more about the admissions process. Amardeep, I'll start with you. So, different admissions processes or models are coming up, and let's say some colleges are going test optional, or some colleges are returning to test required. Then there are some institutions which say, let's say they give on-spot admissions sort of things. Then there is the EA, ED, REA, all of those different kinds of admission cycles. But I would like to learn a little more about what kind of support or clarity are students seeking from you? What kind of questions are coming to you from parents on those different, very unique, interesting admission terminologies?
Sure. So if you look at the college admissions world, especially in the US, it's gotten, in my opinion, way more complicated with all these test optional, text flexible, direct admission models. For Indian students, particularly, figuring out these paths isn't just a simple, should I submit my scores or not question. It actually really requires a really smart and a personalized strategy. So if you talk about standardized testings, most US universities, I think the number, you're going to call me a number junkie, but that's my engineering background. About 1,900 four-year institutions are still test optional for 2025. And this policy took off during the pandemic, and the idea was to make testing fairer and more accessible to everybody. But what people don't see, and I see that, with schools, very esteemed schools that have very qualified counselors like those on the panel, is obviously an exception. But I don't think the general schools that do not, either don't have career counselors or college counselors, or they don't have very experienced ones. What the students don't know is test optional does not mean test irrelevant. And that's something time and again I find myself talking to families about. If you submit scores, they are looked at as a part of your overall application. So looking at the Common App data, it says 11% more applicants submitted scores this year, which tells us that people still feel it helps. Now, for a twist, Highly selective universities are actually bringing back standardized test scores for 25-26, right? Harvard, Yale, Brown, Georgetown, Caltech, Purdue, all of those. Now, these schools often say that their own research shows that test scores can actually make admissions more inclusive and show if a student is ready for college level work. Now, this is where the paradigm is very different from students who are in bigger cities versus students for smaller cities. The test actually gives them an opportunity to showcase that even if they are from a state board or a NIOS, for example, that they are equivalent to these students who come from very rigorous curriculums and from very prestigious schools. Now, the situation is very, very tricky for Indian students, and I think their cultural perspective is very important here. I think we come from a culture that's so focused on tests, and so this test optional ambiguity can sometimes feel even more stressful than a clear requirement. So sometimes the unspoken truth is that strong scores can really boost an application for competitive programs. That means that counselors like us have to give very specific, individualized advice on testing strategy or admission strategy in general. I think that other admission, besides testings, other models are also gaining ground. The direct admission models, like you talked about, or the foundation program, like the Into University partnerships. I feel like, in terms of answering your questions, what kind of clarity are families looking for? I think one is the test optional for sure. They're looking at a lot of real clarity. They need to know if not submitting scores truly won't put them at a disadvantage, or if there is a hidden advantage to submitting strong scores. The other thing is they also need guidance on other application parts. If tests are less important, for example, then essays or recommendations or extracurriculars, or how tough their high school courses were, that becomes even more critical. And student needs a lot of help telling their unique story and showing off their strengths. So that's number two. Number three, unfortunately, that I feel goes very, very unanswered, and something that I'm a big advocate of for people, those who know me, is mental health support in institutions. I think there is so much anxiety just in the application process, but when the students actually go there, I know firsthand of students who've gone to top-notch institutions and were either not able to complete their degree and come back because they just didn't get the mental health support that they needed. I know of very small, nurturing, hidden gem institutions that provide phenomenal mental support, and I urge everybody in this webinar, please look at that aspect of the application. Given where our children are going, given how many of them are going through anxiety, depression, and all of these mental health issues, that's something we need clarity on for sure. And I think the last one I would probably say is, given the recent developments, I think the clear visa and post-work study work information is very, very important. I think the frequent policy changes in places like Canada and the UK, even the US now, no thanks to the gentleman in power, they create a huge uncertainty. The students need up-to-date, reliable information on visas, on post-study work opportunities. And I think that is where our collaboration with the AOs, it's actually like coming together to make sure that the students who are involved in this process are successful. So we all need to make collective efforts, and webinars like these or associations that are now being formed in India are a great way for a cohort to come together and find out these requirements and share them with their families.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, I love the numbers that you shared first, that 11% more students sharing their SAT scores, which clearly states that while more institutions, let's say, going test optional or not, but students are deciding to take the SAT and share those scores. But clearly there are some points which colleges can add in their communications that they're sending to the students, which is offer more clarity on how are you using the SAT scores, whether you're using it or not. And of course, sharing resources like the IS, the International Student Services, or what kind of mental health support do you have on your campuses?
Also, I just feel like, colleges, if we could request them, to give us clear-cut idea of what are you as an institution looking for. I find most of these webinars to be very generic in nature, and it really helps students to understand whether they are a right fit, not just whether they have a good chance of getting in, but are they going to really be thriving? Because based on what the institution is looking for, students can then make an informed decision on whether this would be the right place for them to thrive in the next 4 years.
Absolutely. Thanks for covering that Neha, over to you. What are your thoughts on the the challenges or the different confusion that might surround when a student applies to a college?
Um, Devesh, first of all, I'd like to say that Amardeep has very comprehensively covered most of the points that has to be considered while you apply to the university. Definitely, transparency has become like a big thing for students. They want to know that which test they'll be taking, what is the score that students need. And along with that, they also want to understand the evaluation criteria of the admission processes because different countries have different application processes. And of course, it becomes complicated when students choose from 2 to 3 different countries, and they would definitely want clarity on what is required. And then they tailor their applications by regions. So it takes a huge toll on students to manage their grade 12 school work, school load, and of course, they're also engaged in certain extracurricular activities beyond school, and then managing this while they're studying and navigating through their test and all. Because academics is something that all institutions look at. So they would like to tailor their applications by region and understand what the universities need. Along with that, I think s- profile building is kind of taking a center stage here now. So everybody is looking at academics per se, and if you attain that kind of academics, supposedly applying to NUS or HKUs and HKUST, then you know what else a student can offer to the university. So that unfortunately I think needs to be curved, and it's not profile building. Like I say to my students, it's character building. It is for your own good, how you're going to become better while you're navigating the higher education in different countries. So definitely I think we need to also cultivate a culture where profile building is not commercialized, but at least we tell students it's character building, which enhances your communication ability to articulate what you want. And also some of my students have come back to me and say that whatever they learned with me in terms of amazingly, we had this kind of an opportunity where we built a careers cabinet for students. And it was there I told them it's character building. And then they realized that whatever they learned through the process of the cabinet, they're actually working in the universities. And of course, they are getting money for the work that they're doing. So it helped them at least to go there and put themselves out and expose themselves to the opportunities that they are getting. And third, I also think that getting money and aid, whether India or abroad, it doesn't matter. Getting aid has become a huge component of an application process. So children want to know what kind of scholarships they can avail and where they can avail. Like earlier, before we started our conversation, and Ms. Poonam mentioned about in a very good point that she mentioned, knowing her, I know that she's very passionate about neurodivergent students. In the process of competition, I think those students lack in aid. So aid is something that our universities can come and tell us that, this is what they can offer to students. Because of course it's huge. It's like a dent in the pocket when parents have to shell that money out. And these private institutions in India, though they are great, but of course, they're a little pricey.
Yeah. Well,
And
sorry.
yeah, you
Go
were
ahead.
saying something? No, no, go ahead.
Go ahead, Neha. Go ahead, please.
Um, and of course, as counselors, I think we help them simplify the processes. And, that kind of hand holding when we give to the students, that definitely eases that stress out. Like Amardeep mentioned, it's quite a draining process. Yes, that, we being there, we tell students to have patience and we'll help you out. So, of course, that kind of hand holding, nurturing, guidance, and simplifying the processes for them, that really helps the students. So, definitely, all of us can be big help to our students in that case. And do you want me to add something on the test taking? Because I have a point here where, again, like Amardeep has brought in like huge, perspective on that. But I'll also say that it saves, those kind of undue tests that each university has. So if you take a certain scholastic aptitude test, I'll urge people to check that out. Some universities would have their individual tests, and once you submit your SATs, you don't have to give those tests, and it takes away one hurdle from you. So whether it's India, whether it's certain countries in the Europe, or you're applying to Australia per se, you should check that aspect also while you're taking the test. And along with that, some students also need to check the testing requirement for the professional programs, for example, medicine, law, for that matter. or a pre-med program that they're taking in certain countries, they need to take a certain test. So they check with the universities. So it's a little complicated, and that needs a lot of research and search to do that, and communication with the AOs. So that process also needs some simplification, because even for a counselor like me, it takes a lot of time to understand that what a university wants, specifically for certain programs.
Yes.
So I think that kind of simplification will really help students.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
That's those some amazing ideas. I mean, first of all, we are all clean bold on the character building point. I think that is something we need to not just focus, profile building. I mean, I've myself been doing a lot of profile building fairs for
Yeah.
of a better word of what to call this, but character building is such a powerful way to tell the student that don't just do that activity for your college application. Do
Yes,
it because
absolutely.
you care about it. And secondly, definitely, I think all of us need to contribute towards simplifying the process, because as counselors, I'm sure you have students applying to many, many countries. And first of all, countries have their different requirements. And then within those, colleges have different requirements. A medical school in the UK has some completely very different requirements.
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
So I think I don't know where, it's a very, very, it'll take probably many, many years to sort of make some more systematic or sort of simplified process for this. Within India also, it's very different how different colleges admit students. Uh, so anyway, moving forward to the last question before we open questions from the audience is we'll start with you, Poonam ma'am. And this is question which I really love talking about, is what type of programs or majors are you seeing an increased interest in amongst your students this year? And how are they evaluating the quality or relevance of the academic offerings?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a question that's close to my heart too, Devesh. So two parts to the question: what kind of majors and programs they are looking at. I'm going to use the often used word interdisciplinary. Uh, Also, I think in a school like ours, whether it's a national or the international curriculum, children have the opportunity to take any subject combination. Like in the ISC, a child can take an accounts with a physics and a commerce and an eco and a math. He can also do a history with science subjects. So they already come with that approach, and that continues with our children, where they are looking at interdisciplinary courses even within India, because there are options. Abroad, of course, we have those options. And children are also, earlier the change is that children used to be happy to drop math or happy to drop science or both, but now they are understanding that that basic knowledge of science goes especially math, goes a long way later in life. Whether because they also know that there is data everywhere in college, there is data that is required everywhere in their jobs. So they are holding on to math. Some may do well, some may not do so well. And there is a lot of focus on tech, because there are so many courses, and they also know that everything is linked to data, tech, AI, machine learning. Even today, HR is all completely AI driven in the bigger companies. Medicine, yes, but very very warms my heart to see that they are also looking at the other options in medicine, which is paramedical options, biochem, biotech, looking at research, doing researching a college to see what the research opportunities are. Do the colleges get funded research? Will undergraduate students be permitted to do research with their students? Environment and sustainability continues to be a big one. They also look at history, sociology from different lenses, whether they are looking to specialize in archaeology or specialize in museums. A lot of our students also look at those humanities subjects. Now, coming to the second part of the question, which you talked about, how are they evaluating these majors? So within a college, when suppose even if they decide to do psychology, I'm sure most students across the globe do that. They're also getting into the intricacies of the course structure between how a BS psychology is different from a BSc psychology, or likewise for an economics program, right? And What is it that they need to pursue to be able to get, like in Ireland, critical skills? They have started asking questions about that. What should they do to get their visa to be sure that they can stay on in Ireland? And of course, the usual conversations about salary, internships, the job prospects, post-study work options if they're looking at a country, and also looking at reports to see which country is good for which industry. Like Ireland, we know is very good for anything that's related to pharmacology, AI, agriculture. So they are opening their minds to destination, understanding that every destination is important for a certain industry, and hence that becomes more job ready. Another interesting question that they've started asking AOs is about the co-op options. Will I get credits? They know that co-op is not only in Canada, it is in the other countries as well. So those conversation, and they also understand that it is the co-op option, whether you give it the name co-op or you give it the name an internship which bears credits for a semester, they understand that it is a pathway to jobs. Like I know Northeastern and Drexel have really gone up the rankings simply because of their co-op program in the US. That's one big factor, that because the graduates from those universities are way more employable. So these are, these are pretty much the ways in which they are evaluating their majors.
Superb. Thanks for sharing that. Interdisciplinary, techie subjects are on the rise. And then when students think of bio and med, they are now more open to the paramedical side, or sort of biotech, those kind of majors as well. And
Physiotherapy, yeah.
yeah. And interesting addition from your side, which I was not sort of, which I found unique, was history and sociology, and for students who are looking at archaeology as a major. But do have you all others also seen some sort of an increase in that? Do you see history is, because I love talking about history and all of those things, but that is also picking up, yeah? Okay, wonderful. Anjali, what are your thoughts on this? How have you seen this? What kind of majors are your students talking about?
I think Poonam ma'am has covered it really well. But I think the one shocker that I do find is that computer science is something that people are questioning now. With the advent of AI, there is a lot of ambiguity around the job security that a computer science degree brings. And that to me is quite an eye opener because, computer science was such a coveted major until last year. And I've had at least five meetings, the past month where people are questioning the validity of a computer science degree and actually wanting to opt in for something different. I think that has been quite something which, which has been somewhat of an eye opener. The other thing that I feel that I would like to stress to all students while they do research the major that they potentially want to, and you build towards that major that you want to apply for, it's very important to make them also understand that in countries like the US, you can actually declare your major by the end of your sophomore year. Which is a very important part of making them understand that you don't have to limit yourself at 16, 17. You can actually go into, as long as you're restricted to a certain school, you can switch around your majors, you can be interdisciplinary if you want, which I think is a very big value to the American system of education. Having said that, the UK and other countries are more streamlined, more similar to India, where you have to channelize what you want to do. And in that case, perhaps shadowing people for internships is a very good way of knowing whether that major actually works for you or not. So I even say that if you want to just go into an office for 5 days, even if you're doing nothing, it just gives you a sense. Like I had a student who was very keen on law. And when she followed a lawyer around, she realized that, this sort of stuff is not what she wants to do.
Yeah.
So I think job shadowing, and a lot of schools, I think Shriram has a very robust program as well of internships and job shadowing, which is very integral to establishing a major, because we are talking about 16, 17-year-olds. And that becomes a very key part of sort of molding their mind. And like Poonam ma'am mentioned, the reasons for why they want to go in for a particular, how are they evaluating the major research opportunities, internship opportunities, cities which offer jobs where, you're qualifying for that major. So they want to choose their colleges according to that. So all of that is now beginning to, I think there's a lot of awareness also, not
Yeah.
only of the child, but also of parents. Parents, more than the child, I think the parents are very involved with this process of selection of colleges, which is fantastic. I mean, it's very educative, it's very collaborative, I would say. You have to sort of collaborate with the parent and, figure what you really want to do. And of course, as mentioned, the 3-year OPT in the US is very, very important for STEM-based courses. And that is definitely, even there are courses in economics today which offer a STEM program. So people are very savvy about that. Having said that, of course, rules could change in the US. We don't know. But as of now, as the rules stand, people are opting for more STEM-based programs. Is definitely something I would say. And of course, interdisciplinary is great, which is like eco and psychology. I find a lot of people going in for behavioral sciences because that's something that straddles both. So they're happy to take up economics and psychology, which is again amazing, I think. So yeah, that's my 2 bit for that.
Oh, fantastic.
Can I just
So,
add something,
yes,
Devesh?
yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Thanks, Anjali, for pointing out that bit about internships. Yes, we do have a robust internship program, but I think if anyone from a school which does not have a designated career counseling cell watches, I think the teachers should encourage students to do internships. We had a student who thought of medicine, and the minute he interned and he saw blood, he decided, oh, this is not my calling. So that's how powerful internships can be. And we must try to implement it, even if it's not a school with a privileged career counseling cell. Thank you.
Devesh, may I take the liberty of just
Yes,
adding a
please
couple of
feel
things?
free. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that this is so well put by both Poonam ma'am and Anjali. I think what we are seeing is a really practical and forward-thinking mindset. And while the traditional fields are still popular, I also have noticed that students are looking for lack of a better word, highly specialized and future-proof areas. Yeah. And I'm seeing a huge jump in the demand for programs that mix technology, business, and even creativity. Yeah. So if you look at programs that, even liberal arts with maybe like a practical edge, for example, combining AI with psychology or robotics with ethics. Recently, I had a student who wanted to apply for robotics with public policy. So you see a lot of you see a big move towards mixing foundational knowledge with modern relevance and direct job skills. The other thing that has come to our notice from smaller cities is the increase in demand for short-term courses and micro credentials. I think that quick-based, skill-based certifications in areas, for example, cloud computing or digital marketing, we see that those are gaining popularity, and many international students are now adding these micro credentials to their traditional degrees to boost their job prospects. And I have some counterparts in Europe who were telling me that students will go and to their universities either in their own country or in neighboring countries to do these micro credentials because they see a huge boost in their resume and their readiness for the industry. So I think that shifts is the future proof careers are picking up steam.
Wow, superb. Thank you to all the 4 fantastic panelists. This is such an enlightening.
Devesh, sorry to interrupt, but I'd also like to add to that. I mean,
Absolutely.
I one way that I follow with students is sometimes, of course, the job market really, impacts the decision making on major selection. But also sometimes I see that students are really not aware with what they want to pick up. In that case, I do one activity with students and I call it as program review. So what happens in that we take them through some, unconventional majors and discuss what are the pros and cons about it, how long they'll take to get into the job market and things like that. And also make them aware that what unconventional career prospects they can come up with. So today only in the morning we had a very interesting discussion where a student wanted to pick up economics and she's been talking about it since 1.5 year, and she was telling me certain things that she is doing which showed me her bent towards English and linguistic studies. And then we took her through the course structure and all, and I came up with a list of 5 to 6 career outcomes. And then she said, I'll think about it. And later we had a conversation in the evening, and she was sold out on doing English because that was her area of interest. And like she was doing a very interesting assignment on mathematics and linguistics. So, I mean, sometimes students need that navigation to find out that what else they can do besides, there's certain conventional form of majors that they are picking up, like everybody mentioned about computer science, psychology, economics. These are very popular majors, but sometimes that kind of work with students can also lead them to pick up certain other majors.
So, once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining the call. Thanks, Amardeep, Anjali, Neha, Poonam ma'am, for joining this panel, for spending your time with us. Thanks to all the admission officers. I can see Amy from Tulane, Denver from Syracuse, Hector from Lane University. Thanks for being with us with your cameras on. Everyone else who's also here, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you all here. We'll share the recording with you, and if there are any more questions, I'll be very happy to take these questions to the panelists via email and make sure that I get back to you with their responses. Once again, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening or a great day. Bye.
Thank you, Devesh, for having
Thank
us
you.
and curating this panel. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Devesh. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.